You can make a difference here at the Voice of College Football. Use the Amazon link. Financially contribute to the Voice of College Football without spending a penny. Same shopping experience. It's easy. Go to any video on any channel. Go to the description section and grab the link right next to the capital letters that say Amazon. Use that link and Amazon will instantaneously convert to your account, settings, history, everything intact. Just like whatever link you use right now, no difference. Pay no attention to the product that you see right there. Just go search what you want. Don't forget the Amazon link. Thank you for your support. Sincerely, the Voice of College.
And we are back here on LSU Tigers Live, right here on the LSU at the Voice of College Football Network YouTube channel. That's a really long name. I just sometimes you don't realize how long that name is. But I'm Grant Sastre, joined here by Zach Junda, of course, of And the Valley Shook. We co-host the show every Monday at 6 p.m. Central Time, unless we got something else going on, and we'll let you guys know if any changes happen. But every Monday, 6 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Zach, man, how was your weekend? Outside the LSU baseball series, which I know that was pretty disappointing. But besides that, how was it?
It was a good weekend, I guess. My Met Gala invitation, I think, got lost in the mail, so that's why I'm here instead of up there. But I'm happier to be here than at the Met, which I still don't know really what it is. So I'm not missing anything.
Yeah, that's something I never really understood what the Met Gala was outside of. It's just a party where celebrities play dress up, and wear these weird costumes. But that's the only thing I know about the Met Gala. I don't know what it's really there for, other than just to be seen. But it looks like they have a good time. But I had a pretty good weekend. Of course, a pretty busy weekend, but a pretty fun weekend outside of the baseball series loss. But although we'll talk about that a little bit, we already kind of did a recap of the series. So we'll talk about really what's been affecting LSU for the last, let's say, month or two, really ever since SEC play started, which has been its hitting struggles. A lot of people blame the bullpen, but it's really been just the hitting. But that's not what we're going to start off the show with today. Of course, we already know what's going on, and it's some big news happened last night, which was A.J. Haulcy, who was the former All-Big 12 safety at Houston. He announces that he will be transferring to LSU. It was between LSU and Miami, but A.J. Haulcy decided to come play for your LSU Fighting Tigers. But Zach, what are your overall thoughts about this move that happened last night?
Yeah, I don't know if this is the missing piece for LSU's roster, or like Haulcy's the thing that's going to get them from CFP hopeful to actual contender to hopefully hoisting that big jewel looking trophy come January. But this was safety was the biggest glaring hole still kind of on LSU's roster, and Haulcy is the biggest fish in the portal at that position. LSU addressed the need, and we've talked about it for a couple of weeks now. I mean, it hasn't been since Grant dealt it that LSU's had a legitimate good safety play in the backfield, which is just so opposite of what you think of with LSU. And for the first time in 7-8 years, LSU's got some real talent in the secondary, with Haulcy, Mansour Delane, Tamarcus Cooley, DJ Pickett, Jakeem Jackson. You've still got Ashton Stamps. You've still got PJ Woodland. You're hoping for Deshaun Spears. LSU might actually have some future Sunday guys back there, which hasn't been the case the past couple of years. And they're getting difference makers. They're not just getting bodies just to fill positions. It's people who could legitimately change the ceiling of LSU's 2025 season.
Yeah, definitely, Zach. I mean, just pulled up his stats right there. An 80.5 PFF grade. Only had 159 yards allowed on him, 5 interceptions, 6 pass breakups, a 64.9 passer rating allowed, and an 85.5 coverage grade, which is really good. LSU, if you looked at this past defense last year, it wasn't the cornerbacks. I thought the quarterbacks did a really good job maintaining the outside. It was when the teams decided to throw it over the top that LSU had troubles with. Of course, you had guys like Sage Ryan and Major Burns back there. And even though they tried to move Sage Ryan around and they tried to move Major Burns around, it still didn't work. And it was very clear that LSU's biggest weakness defensively last year, and you really could say the last few seasons, has been the safety position. And it just seems like we haven't had a bona fide safety. You could probably say since 2019, because even like as good as Derek Stingley was, he dealt with a lot of injury problems, and you really didn't. That's more of a cornerback. But in terms of safety, I mean, Greg Brooks maybe, but in terms of like when you think of LSU, you think of good defensive back play, and you haven't had a stud safety like a bona fide dog back there. You could say since Grant Delpit. You can make a case for Greg Brooks, but Grant Delpit was really the last one where you stood out like, oh, that guy's a dog.
Yeah, and credit to Matt Moscona today in his opening segment talking about Haulcy. I'm going to get the numbers wrong because I didn't jot them down, but he was comparing and contrasting like Haulcy's career versus Jordan Gilbert, who's the most veteran safety on LSU's roster. Either Gilbert's played one more game or one less. I think Gilbert's played one more game than Haulcy in their career, and Haulcy has like 100 more tackles.
Yeah.
So like this is just someone who, I mean, obviously he's going to have to come in and earn a starting spot, but let's not kid ourselves. He's not coming here in his last year of eligibility. First of all, he's not transferring away from Houston to be a rotational piece. He's going to be, you can already put it in pen. Haulcy is your starting safety. Who lines up next to him, that's TBD, but LSU needed a guy and they got a guy at safety. So LSU's putting their money where their mouth is finally. So good on them. Now they need to actually, now it's on the staff. Now that you've got the ingredients, okay, what can you come up with?
And I just want to make this just say this right now is that LSU didn't really have to pay much for AJ Haulcy. That has been confirmed. I talked to Preston Guy before he put out the tweet. Let me show you this to you guys. Well, actually, let me read it out to you. So, this is what Preston said. And I actually texted before he even put this out. But after speaking with sources, I can confirm transfer safety AJ Haulcy received a fair, modest deal with no guarantees of playtime at LSU, as reported last week on the Tiger Beat site. Reading between the lines, it appears to me Haulcy wanted to come in and prove he could do it at a major school. That was from Preston Guy of TigerBait.com. I actually texted him, about the whole situation because there was a lot that was coming out. Of course, I don't want to say names, but there were certain people that were putting out information that he was the most expensive transfer portal addition in the transfer portal era. But that was quickly shut down by actually LSU staff members, and but it was actually came out that he really didn't actually get that much. He just really wanted to come to LSU. Well, he wanted to play in the SEC, but LSU was the best fit. As you know, LSU is DBU for a reason. Even in the years where LSU may be struggling at that side of the field, they're still putting out defensive backs into the NFL draft, whether it is a cornerback or a safety or a nickel. It doesn't matter. LSU is known for developing defensive backs with the highest potential. And even that guy who may be like a 3-star recruit could be a 3rd-round pick or a 4th-round pick, like Zay Alexander. Zay Alexander, I'm pretty sure, was a 2-star, maybe even less than that. I believe he got drafted. I think he did get drafted. But Zach, if you correct me if I'm wrong.
I actually don't. I don't think Zay did get drafted. But
no, he didn't get drafted, but
he
got signed right away.
Okay.
Yeah.
But thank you for mentioning that Preston tweet. I didn't see that show. If that is the case, where they didn't guarantee him playing time and he still wanted to come here and be a part of this, all the more credit to him. Personally, I would still think that there might be an understanding that he's going to come here, and start. But good on you, kid. Go earn it. And frankly, I think he is going to earn it, because I'm not trying to belittle what else she's already got on hand, but they needed a safety, and he wouldn't be coming here otherwise. What, we didn't really prep this, but what does week 1 snap 1 against Clemson, what's the starting defensive back look like to you as we stand here May 5th, 6:10 p.m. ish?
There's a lot of moving pieces. Hold on, if I had to guess, actually, give me one second. I wrote it down somewhere. Where's my other notepad?
While you do that, Grant, I'll just think aloud. I'm going to assume it's Haulcy. I'm going to assume Tamarcus Cooley starts either as like a nickel or runs next to him at safety. I'm going to assume Mansour Delane is a boundary corner. I think DJ Pickett's going to be starting. I think he's that talented. I think he's that good. I believe I lost count. I think I named 4 names. And I think if you're going with like a 5 DB set, I would say Ashton Stamps is a starter.
And this is what I'd say, just because there's a lot of depth at cornerback, and now with the addition of AJ Haulcy, I would say. So at the start of, when they go out to fall camp, I can tell you who's going to be the starting lineup right now. It's going to be Mansour Delane, Ashton Stamps. At start, it's going to be Harold Perkins, but Harold Perkins is more of a linebacker, but also expect to see Austin Osbury get some reps and star as well when it comes to pass coverage package. Harold can cover the pass, right? He was really good at covering the pass. But in terms of maybe more like 4 or 5 receiver sets, they might have Austin Osbury out there, because Austin Osbury, is more of a natural star than, let's say, Harold Perkins is, because Harold Perkins is more of a linebacker star. Austin Osbury is more of a safety star. But in terms of safeties, I think the star fall camp is going to be Tamarcus Cooley and JV and Toviano, because they're not going to give the starting position right away to AJ Haulcy, right? Preston explained in this tweet that this isn't we're going to, you're going to be the star. No, you got to prove it. And he's going to play, right? Don't get me wrong. He's going to play. Like, he may not start the first game, but I expect him to start as season goes along, right? Because I think the defensive backfield is much better than it has been. I think JV and Toviano, I think people forget that JV and Toviano is finally back at his more natural position. So I think JV, and he actually performed really good in the spring game. Like, he was all over the place. But like I explained in my in Go Time, when I discussed when I initially reacted to the commitment from AJ Haulcy, I said the safety room is much more firm than it has been in a while, because now you actually have guys that are in the room that are actually legit safeties. And you can say whatever you want about Jardine Gilbert. I know he struggled a lot last year, but Jardine Gilbert was also dealing with injury problems last year. So I want to know what Jardine Gilbert will look like when he's healthier, because he had to be back there. There's nobody else. So with a much better safety room, one that has more talent and depth, AJ Haulcy, the addition of AJ Haulcy only strengthens LSU's chances of making the playoff. And I said like the expectations are not risen, right? You already signed Bernard Gooden. Defensive line set. We already know that. Linebackers set. Cornerbacks set. The only position group that I was wondering if LSU was going to add another player was the safety room, because it felt like they needed another piece. That guy's AJ Haulcy, and I think just the defense is much, much better. And I'm really excited for this defense this year. This is the first time in a while where I'm really excited for this LSU defense. And that's saying a lot, because we always used to be excited for LSU's defense. It was kind of a given that LSU's defense was going to be just have a bunch of dogs running around looking for raw meat. But in the last few seasons, kind of towards the end of the Orgeron era, and then also even extended into the Brian Kelly era, we really have seen a defense where like, oh yeah, there's a bunch of dogs out there. Maybe besides Taylor Perkins, but that's it. Now we're like, oh, we have a bunch of bona fide dogs. Like, and I feel a lot more confident going to that Clemson game than I was even before the spring. Now I see what the defensive line's like, and the linebackers are really good. And now the defensive backfield, has a lot more talent and depth. The sky's the limit for LSU, Zach.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm wondering. I don't want to go so far as to say as LSU has no holes on the roster, but this Haulcy edition does seem to kind of soothe all like, I don't know about safety, or I don't know. Now they have Bernard Gooden. I'm not sure about defense tackle. Again, I'm not saying that there's no questions, but do you get what's like? It just seems like there's an answer for every like any kind of like pushback you might get like on the online community about like, well, what about LSU's linebackers? What about LSU's this? What about LSU's that? We've got a solution here. I think the biggest question now, and only time is going to tell, and it probably is going to be the biggest question mark no matter what, is offensive line. And, with losing 4 starters, that was going to be a question no matter what. And we're not going to know the answer until week 1 against Clemson. But by bringing in Josh Thompson and I'm blanking on the other Virginia Tech, the center.
Braylon Moore.
Braylon Moore. Yeah, thank you. And the staff, I mean, you're at practices, you're a little more tuned in than I am. The staff seems to really like the tandem of Tyree Adams and Weston Davis at tackle, yeah?
Yeah, that's what it's been looking like. I mean, I don't know how long this is going to last. Look, it'd be hard for me to see Josh Thompson not being part in the starting lineup. Also hard for me to not see Braylon Moore as the starting line, unless like the guys are currently right there are just balling out and look better, and they're not letting up. But it's hard not to play either both Braylon Moore and Josh Thompson on the offensive line because of their experience, right? Josh Thompson was a stud at Northwestern. The stats don't lie. Look at the PFF grades. Like, he's a really good offensive lineman. And then Braylon Moore is a veteran center. And yeah, I think DJ Chester will still. I think it would also be hard for me to see DJ Chester not be a part of the starting line. Right? I think he's going to either start at center or guard. I don't know which one it is yet, but I think if he doesn't start at center, he's going to move to guard, and I think that may be more natural for him because it's hard. It's just, I think the coaches like DJ Chester, right? They trust him. He was the backup center to Charles Turner his true freshman year. That's the reason why Marlon Martinez transferred to Mississippi State. He's the reason. Yeah, so I think they like him, but they also
game.
Right, but they also like Tyree Adams too. Like Tyree Adams, that when if Will Campbell or Emory Jones had to step out for a play, the guy they sent out there was Tyree Adams, and he could start at both left tackle and right tackle. And I think he's going to be the left tackle. I think Josh Thompson's going to be the right tackle, and then I don't know how the interior is going to look, but it'd be hard for me to see Braylon Moore not start at center, just given his experience, and also he knows he's played in Death Valley before, in terms of not our Death Valley, but Clemson's Death Valley. Right, we're going to go there August 30th. And you need as much experience on the field as possible. And Braylon Moore is that guy for LSU. He knows how to deal. Well, all those guys know how to deal with the noise, but he's not compared to some of the other guys who are on the starting line right now. He's the only one that's been in that stadium. He's started over 30 games. Same thing with Josh Thompson. So it'd be hard for him to see either of those guys not starting the offensive line. But going back to the defensive backfield, Zach, and I know we already kind of already talked about this a bunch of times before with the reaction video to commitment, and also the video discussing his visit to LSU. He actually was supposed to take a multi-day visit too, by the way. He committed on day one, which says a lot about the commitment. But one of the things that I want to talk about to you, Zach, is as of right now, do you see LSU as the best team in the SEC? And that's a serious question.
I think they might be. They're probably not going to open preseason AP as the highest ranked SEC team, and that's fine. I'm not going to pretend to say that I know like Georgia's roster up and down or Texas's roster up and down right now, but LSU's got to. I'd put them up against anybody at this moment, and I think the schedule's pretty favorable. It's sometimes it's as simple as it's not. It comes down to who you play and when you play them. You get the South Carolina game back at home. Now you have to go to Alabama. You have to go to Oklahoma. I mean, Oklahoma was kind of a mess last year, but Oklahoma, you're expecting to bounce back. And Oklahoma in late November, that's not going to be fun. You got to go to Ole Miss, but Ole Miss is kind of I'm actually glad we're talking about Ole Miss right now, because the thing I do worry about with LSU's kind of going all in for 2025, and that's great. I love that they're going for it. Ohio State went all in last year and ended up in a trophy, but you know what? Ole Miss went all in last year and it ended up with them playing in Jacksonville. So it does kind of seem like.
Well, actually, they played in Charlotte. They played at the Mayo Bowl, I think, if I remember correctly.
Well, either way, they didn't end up where they wanted to. And I guess that maybe if you want to be like, I don't know if skeptical or cynical is the right word, but if you're going to go all in, you better make sure you're at least playing in that 12-team playoff, because I bet there's a whole bunch of people at Ole Miss who are still kind of like, man, we blew it. And yeah, I'm kind of talking myself into it. This is great. LSU's the best team in the SEC. I just talked myself into it.
Yeah. And I also want to correct myself. They did play in Charlotte, but to me, Charlotte and Jacksonville are the same thing. Like, if you're not in the Year 6 Bowl, to me, all the bowl games are basically the same. But Zach, I mean, if you go down, Ole Miss, I'm glad you brought up that example, right? Because we saw Ole Miss, what happened with them. Yeah, they went all out. It didn't work out, and now they barely returned anybody from last season. We've already seen the disaster that unfolded in Florida State, where they completely invested in the transfer portal. But then when all those guys left, right, Jordan Travis, Keon Coleman, all those guys left, they became a crapshoot. And then on top of that, you look at Ohio State. And Ohio State's
got some questions.
That's the story. But if you look at the difference between Ohio State, I think LSU wants to do what Ohio State did, right? Because people think, Ohio State brought their whole team. Yeah, they had a really good transfer class, but most of the star players were guys that already came back, right? Like Travion Henderson was already there. Jack Sawyer was already there. A lot of those guys, so a lot of their stars were still there, right? And I think that's what LSU wants to do, right? Develop your own, and if you have any holes, fill in those holes using the transfer portal, and that's exactly what they did. And you needed as much talent as possible, because if you don't have the talent, you're not going to win the games you need to win to go to the college football playoff, let alone win the SEC or win the national championship. So I think I think LSU trying to build off of what Ohio State did, which is a great model. And really, LSU did need to go into the transfer portal because, not only to get more talent and depth, but if you win a lot, that the future's bright, a lot more brighter if you don't invest in. You already saw what happened with Clemson. Clemson, for the first time in a while, started to invest into the transfer portal. Dabo was really bullish on using the transfer portal, and then once it started getting a little heat, he started using the transfer portal, and it looks like, I think right now Clemson is a playoff team. Kate Klubnik had a great year last year, and they have a lot of guys coming back, same like LSU. So you need, if you're LSU, you need to go in the transfer portal because if you have a very successful year, that bodes well for the future. You need to win because when LSU started losing last year, that's when you started to see the trickle down effect of guys starting to decommit. Like, should I be here? Are they a playoff team or they're kind of like fence sitting? Because last year, LSU has been stagnant the last few years. First year, you go to the SEC championship. Could that, of course, that helps when you have divisions, right? But in the modern college football landscape, you don't have divisions anymore. So, LSU stayed stagnant. They went 10-4 the first year, 10-3 last season, which was a disappointment because your defense, they couldn't tackle anybody. They couldn't even tackle my 85-year-old grandfather if they had the chance. And my 85-year-old grandfather is using a walker. That's how bad that defense was in 2023. And then 2024, of course, that was a disappointment on all fronts. Now, Gary Nussbaum did have a great year, and there were some bright spots in that season last year. But you could tell that team was missing what it needs to win championship, which is a speed and physicality on the defensive side, especially at this safety spot. The linebackers are fine, and the cornerbacks were improving, but the safeties, that's a common theme in the show, the safeties really lacked what you need to have if you want to win games. So let me go to the comment section real quick. Akeem Baptiste, no excuse to at least make the playoffs and possibly host a playoff game. Well, the only way you host a playoff game is if you don't get a first-round bye. But if you don't get a first-round bye, LSU has a great shot of hosting. It's year 4 in BK. He's got to make some hay now, or the temperature on that seat starts to warm up. Yes, and I'm going to say this right now because I think people, when the season starts and sky falls down, I'm going to say this right now. Brian Kelly's not getting fired during the season or after the season. His contract's too expensive. But that's why he's going all out right now, because he can't afford to have another 9-3 season. Because the 9-3 season, yes, you can still make the playoff, but you kind of have to rely on fate. If you're 9-3, if you're 10-2, you have a great chance of getting in because you finish the season 10-2 in the SEC, right? If you have a 10-2 season as SEC, it's almost guaranteed that you're in. It's very, very unlikely that you're not. I'm not saying there's still a chance where LSU can't get in, but if you're a 10-2 SEC team, it's very, very, very unlikely you don't get in.
Yeah, and to your point about Brian Kelly and Dabo are kind of two sides of the same coin. You mentioned how Dabo's opened up a little more bullish, or was bullish about the portal, and his tune has kind of changed. Well, on or around this time a year ago, Brian Kelly famously said, "We're not in the market of buying players." And look what you got now. The number 1 portal class, 18 portal additions. And I'm willing to bet that all 18 of those guys that LSU's added to the portal didn't come here because they just love the purple and gold, But it's also the way college football is played now. So I'm glad LSU's playing the game, and these are the rules that we're playing by. So do it.
Yeah, I also want to add context to that statement. When Brian Kelly said that statement, you also have to think about this, is that the first year, Brian Kelly had to go in the transfer portal because he needed to, right? There's 39 scholarship players. In year 2, they, instead of developing their players, they entered the transfer portal. They started going to the transfer portal and getting guys, and that was a massive failure. Remember, that was the year they got Deuce Chestnut and Denver Harris. And Deuce Chestnut looked like he could be an All-American cornerback during the fall camp, but then when the games were played, he was not a very good player. So you saw that. It's like, okay, we have to develop. We got to focus more on developing our players and not worry about the transfer portal so much, and that backfired to some extent. I'm not sure if it was the direct cause of LSU going finish regular season 8-4, but you can make it. But because you didn't go in the transfer portal, you didn't have the right talent needed to make a playoff push, and that team was a 9-3 type team, but had a 10-2 schedule. That was a very, very favorable schedule. Actually, you can make a case that last season's schedule was more favorable than this year's schedule because you had Alabama coming to Baton Rouge, you had Ole Miss coming to Baton Rouge, you had Oklahoma coming to Baton Rouge, and also the opening game of the season was against USC. And yes, I know USC was a top 25 team going into the game, but when they finished the season, they were 7-5. They had a worse record than LSU did. And you failed. But now, when you have a better roster, you have better players on the defensive side. And I know the offense, right now they're still trying to figure out the offensive line. But if you look at the offense, I mean, Caden Durham is going to be RB1. And I think Carlin Berry might make a case that he could be RB2. He had a great spring game. The receivers have depth, and you also now have deep threats. Cursilum, God forbid, if you can stay healthy, that's a deep threat. Kyle Parker, who also I think was a very underrated not departure. What's the word I'm looking for? Lost because when he tore his ACL, that you lost another guy who was more of a deep threat. Kyle Parker was a deep threat, and he was a great route runner. You missed that. Like as great as Aaron Anderson and Kyron Lacy were, I mean, they're not deep threats, and you need a guy who could be a deep threat. Kyron Lacy was kind of on and off. Aaron Anderson is more of a slot guy, although he could be a 1,000-yard receiver, which he was last season. That's not somebody you want to be your wide receiver one because he's 5'8", 180. You have to have another guy who can extend the field, and then that's what you need. And then you got all those guys. You got Nick Anderson, and you have and I'll say this: Nick Anderson did suffer torn ACL. So again, as great it sounds, we won't know till fall camp and even the season how healthy, if we could get that speed. But Barry Brown, we already know that is a speedster. Your receiving core is really deep, and of course, you're bringing back Garrett Nussmeier, who had the best rookie season of any quarterback when you can make your kids in LSU history. Even Jay Daniels and Joe Burrow didn't have those type of seasons.
Yeah, and we've seen from Daniels and Burrow, and really, I mean, pick a quarterback anywhere. That second-year leap is a real thing. I mean, I know the counting stats aren't everything, but Nussmeier, either did he finish at 4,000 or did he flirt with 4,000? I mean, if he did all that in year one, get him more comfortable, get him, as you said, some deep threats, and a 4,000, 4,500-yard season seems really plausible. And it helps to have. Here's a hot take, Grant. I think it's good to bring back arguably the best quarterback in the country. I think that helps a team's. That probably helps.
Yeah, I don't even think it's a hot take. I mean, he, in terms of yardage in his production last season, who else has that type of production outside of maybe you could say Kate Clubman, right? I mean, there's very few guys that had Garrett Nussmeier's production last season. I know a lot of people are saying Arch. I want to say this again. Arch hasn't played a game yet. It's hard for me to put him in a top 5, top 10 discussion when he hasn't played yet. When the games are played, then we'll start putting him because he should be a top 5, top 10 quarterback. Just given that's how that works in the Manning family, right? But as of right now, let's go down the list of SEC teams. I know just going back to my original question: is LSU the best in the SEC? Georgia is their starting quarterback returning.
No.
It's like, and Gunnar Stockton, yes, he did start a couple of games for Georgia last year. Well, he played the end of the SEC championship game and he started the Sugar Bowl for Georgia. But once again, he's not the returning starting quarterback. He only played a handful of games. Ole Miss.
Nope.
Texas.
Nope.
Oh, well, Oklahoma, they're not returning their starting quarterback, but they're bringing John Mateer, who's a really good quarterback. But again, Oklahoma not returning their starting quarterback. Alabama.
Nope.
Auburn. We don't play them, but they're not returning it.
No.
I mean,
right?
What?
Is it Jackson Arnold? Didn't they get him?
He transferred.
I thought they got whatever.
No, they got John Mateer. They got John Mateer from Washington State. He's a really good quarterback, but not returning their starting quarterback. Besides Florida, Texas A&M,
and Carolina.
Nobody else is returning starting quarterback. Tennessee has a new quarterback this year.
Arkansas
has returned Arkansas returning Taylor Green, but but in terms of the production, in terms of all the quarterbacks in the Southeastern Conference, nobody else has the production that Gary Nussmeier has, and let alone nobody's had the amount of starters are coming back to LSU next year, and also the guys that brought in the transfer portal. Nobody in the SEC really has that. I know games have to be played, but as of right now, if you look at the roster from top to bottom, LSU is a much better team last year, and they're also a much hungrier team this year because this is a team that hasn't lived up to its expectations the last 2 years. And for you to spend all this money in the transfer portal, you're not playing. This is we're not playing around season for LSU. And and I know, and right now we're just talking about it. It's just on paper. But if LSU wants to prove that they're the best team in the country, let alone the SEC, you have to go to Clemson and you have to win a game.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing.
Because that game will determine how this season goes. Yep. That Clemson game will be a lot like the 2019 LSU Texas game.
Yep.
And in the sense of when LSU won that game, we all know what happened. We don't have to explain it. Everyone that's watching this right now knows what happened in 2019. And matter of fact, we probably over talk about it a lot, right? I mean, and everyone else has to hear about it. But look how that 2019 Texas team finished. That 2019 Texas team, who was a top 10 team going into the year, was a team a lot of people thought they could go to the playoffs and was a national title contender. A team that literally beat Georgia upset Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. A team that went to the Big 12 championship the year before. Everyone thought they were going to be the Big 12 champions, and everyone thought that they were going to make a playoff and prove that Texas was back. And it never happened. I mean, they lost games that they shouldn't have lost, and nearly a year and a half later, Tom Herman gets fired. Right? So, it really wasn't until 2023 where Texas, I'll say last year, that Texas is back because they did it 2 years in a row where they made it to the college football playoff. Now they're a bona fide elite program once again. But that's what happened to Texas. Texas became a 7-5 program. That just shows you how important it is to win those big games at the beginning of the year, Zach. But Zach, any last thoughts before we move on?
You can't make it 6 years in a row starting 0-1. You can't do it. You can't. And I mean, I still actually kind of like them playing these big games. Nobody had a problem with LSU playing Oregon back in 2011 and then TCU in 2013 and Wisconsin in 2014. The problem was you won those games. That was cool. The problem is you're losing those games. That's why everybody hates them now. If LSU had beaten Florida State and USC, we'd be like, yeah, bring on Clemson. But because LSU's losing these games, it's suddenly, I don't want to play these games anymore. No.
I'm glad you brought that up because I'm going to rant mode. I am tired of hearing that. Well, LSU, they keep scheduling these hard games. Who doesn't? Like Georgia plays hard games at the beginning of the year every single year, and they win most of them. Clemson, the same thing. Alabama, forever, for the most part, has played tough. Now, a lot of them have been neutral site games, and there's been a lot of criticism that has come with that. But still, they scheduled tough games at the beginning of the year, either as game 1 or game 2. Like, look down some of the elite programs in college football the last 10 to 15 years. They always started with a really tough game to start the season, and LSU is no exception. LSU in 2010 played a top 25 North Carolina team and won. The next year, they played against an Oregon team that was literally hard, so impossible to stop on offense with LaMichael James and Like, they had speed. They averaged like 45, 50 points a game, and LSU's defense shut them down. And that,
coming off a national championship appearance.
They're coming off the national championship run. And a lot of people thought they were going to make it back once again, and LSU's defense shut them down. The next year, LSU, I believe they played TCU, if I remember correctly.
2 years later, but yeah.
Well, 2 years later, 2013, yeah. 2013, they played another TCU, who was just joined the Big 12. They played Wisconsin 2 out of 3 years. 2018, Joe Burrow's first year, they played Miami. Miami was the number 8 team in the country. They were the favorite to win the game, and LSU ran them out the building. I'm sick and tired of the LSU fans complaining about we play our tough parents already. Why can't we play game 2? It doesn't matter. You have to win. The only reason I'm mad about it is because LSU is not winning them.
Yep.
Because if LSU was winning, no one would complain. If you want to blame one person for not winning these games, it's Brian Kelly and the players.
Yep.
Right? More so on Brian Kelly for not getting this team ready to play a football game. And most of those home openers that Brian, even going back to Coach, well, let's go with the Brian Kelly era. When they played against not UCLA, but when they played against Florida State, the second year, you already knew what they were going to do. Most of the guys were coming back, and you got ran out the building. USC, basically the same team, except they replaced the whole defense staff. They were the same exact team like you, but you already seen what USC does. Brian Kelly's played against USC before, and Lincoln Riley.
And you blew it.
And even going back to the Coach O era, the UCLA team last year that got ran out the Rose Bowl, that was virtually the same team from the year before. And that wasn't a hard opponent. UCLA ended up being a good team that year. Don't get me wrong. But most of these games that LSU's playing, they're not nearly as good as that 2011 Oregon team was. They're not nearly as good as the Wisconsin teams were. Like, why we're treating our LSU like we're damn Texas A&M. We're LSU. No other program has won more national championships than LSU in the last 25 years. Really, other than Ohio State. Really, Ohio State and LSU tied. They both won 3 national championships in the last 25 years. The only team that's won more than them is Alabama. That's it. You're LSU. You're an elite program. Tired of LSU fans, like, when they say, well, I don't want to play this tough game. Why can't we play Southern? Because you're LSU. That's why. And I'm sick and tired of LSU fans complaining about this. If you want to blame somebody for not winning these tough games, then you need to blame the damn head coach. Because if LSU loses again, we can't blame Burr Jonesburg or Scott Woodward. You have to blame Brian Kelly. And if he loses that game, I don't think Brian Kelly will ever win another big game while he is the head coach at LSU. The same way in 2021, when LSU lost against UCLA, that was it. We knew that Ed Orgeron was never winning a big game at LSU again. Yeah. And he was later fired in the middle of the season, which hasn't happened, I don't think, hasn't happened at LSU in a while. Like game 5 or 6, you know?
Don't we also open 2026 with Clemson week 1? I mean,
at our home stadium. This is what good teams do. Clemson and Georgia play each other almost every year. Clemson and Auburn play each other almost a decent bit as well. Like, what are we complaining about here? If you want to complain about something, complain about Brian Kelly not winning these big games. And I like Brian Kelly. I think Brian Kelly's a good coach. There's a reason why he's the winningest active head coach in college football right now, even when Nick Saban was coaching. But if he can't win another big game, I'm done with Brian Kelly, to be honest with you. I'm not saying he should be fired because obviously he's being too expensive. But at that moment in time, I'm like, okay, we're just going to be a 9-3, 10-2 team. Yeah, you're
just going to be forever a pretender.
Yeah. And that's the thing. LSU fans need to start acting like our team should be contending and should be playing these big games rather than a pretender like an A&M or an Ole Miss. And that's no disrespect to those programs. I'm not trying to say those programs are bad or whatnot, right? But if you look at those programs and their tradition and the history and compared to LSU, like it's not even close. LSU should, if you want to beat your chest and say we're the best team in the country, we're in a blue blood, we're an elite program, then LSU fans need to stop saying LSU should stop playing these tough week 1 games. Because it's the head coach's damn job to get this team ready to play against a big opponent like Clemson, a big opponent like Florida State, although Florida State I know was ass the last year, but those 2 previous years they were a 10-win team. And Florida State probably should have been in the playoff, but I don't want to get into all that because it's very confusing. But it doesn't matter. If you're LSU, if you're an LSU fan and you're complaining about having a tough week 1 opponent, then kick rocks. Kick rocks. We're LSU. You're supposed to play those big games. And if you want to prove to everybody else that you're a championship team, you play those games and you win them. It doesn't matter if you beat them 55-0 or it comes down to a less miles. We forgot what time was left on the clock, and we're going to run the play. We fail, but there's 13 people on the team because they're Dooley era Tennessee. I don't care how you win them. Win. That's how you win in that championship. You win them. You win the games leading up. Win every game going up to that point, including the national championship game, by the way.
Yeah. I didn't mean to get you so heated.
No, you're fine. Like every time trying to kill time. You brought that up. I had to bring up that point because people are watching it, the more clips, the better.
Yeah.
We're definitely going to clip that part. But anyway, which you guys are, if you're watching this live, that will be clipped. And if you're watching the clip, Zach bring up just a minimal point and ended up being a large part of this discussion. But let's move on to another stressful topic, which has been LSU's hitting struggles. And if you look at Zach, why don't you take it away? Because I know you tweeted out something. Who's blaming Jay Johnson for Who's blaming Jay Johnson for putting out Zach Cohen, who, by the way, is your best reliever out of the
Yeah.
You'd rather blame that than just the abysmal hitting all weekend. You can take it away, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to hand the ball to your best reliever to get 4 outs and a 2-run advantage to work with? I would do that. I don't know why we're faulting Jay Johnson for that instead of looking at his offense scoring 7 runs across 3 games. And this A&M pitching staff, they're not that great. And that's the concerning part. I can understand Tennessee kind of holding you down for a couple of nights because Tennessee's got a really good rotation. I can understand being in a 2-0 game against Oklahoma because Kyson Witherspoon's going to be a first-round pick. But I can't really wrap my head around a mid-tier at best A&M pitching staff just giving you fits. They have not really been hitting lefties that great all this season. People want to ride on Bear Jones for being a quote-unquote midweek merchant. Well, I think it's kind of unfair considering he was your only run in the first doubleheader game. Grant, can you look up the numbers? What is Stephen Milam hitting in SEC play this year?
It's terrible.
It's pretty bad.
He's had a disappointing year so far for LSU. I mean, he's so far as in the overall season, he is batting .286, which isn't bad. But Stephen Milam was batting like .330 last year for LSU, if I remember correctly. And in SEC play, .205. But he was in the 190. He was in the 190s going into the weekend.
Oh, I didn't realize it was that. Okay, 205.
It's bad. Yeah.
Okay. At least he's still he's a plus defender, so you're not losing anything. At least he's making up with a very good glove. But yeah, Milan's been slumping. Well, it's not slumping, but it's been bad all SEC play. I'm of two minds. Jay's really been tinkering with the lineup these past couple of games, which on the one hand I get because you're trying to find something that works, but on the other hand, brother, it's May. Like we're past this point of tinkering and experimenting. Like you need to have the 9 that you're going with and saying, this is come hell or high water, this is who I'm going with. And like one day Derek Coryell's leading off, and then I believe in the Sunday game he's batting cleanup for some reason. And there's still kind of that rotating door of Josh Pearson and Ethan Fry and Jake Brown as your DH, and they still can't really settle on that. Jared Jones, one day he's batting leadoff, then he's batting in the 2-hole. They keep kind of flip-flopping him. So he's trying everything to make it work. And I guess I appreciate the effort, but it seems like he's kind of out of answers. And I'm also kind of wondering, when I think of Jay Johnson teams, I think of mashers and just home run threats. This team doesn't have it.
No,
you've got Jones with, I think, 16 home runs, 17 home runs, whatever it is, but no one else has 10. And I wonder if they're just playing a different style that's counter to what Johnson preaches. And I don't know if they have the right. I don't know if it's the talent doesn't mesh with what Johnson believes in, or if he just doesn't have the right pieces. But Adam Henderson had said this on Twitter, and I borrowed it in my Sunday recap. This LSU team, objectively speaking, they're very good. Obviously, they're still a top 10 team. Mm-hmm. I believe they're number 8 in RPI. They're 3rd place in the SEC. By all the objectives, this is a good team.
Yes.
Not sure it's a great team, though. Not super confident that were they not to get a top 8 seed and be a national host, I'm not so sure that they can go win 2 games on the road in a super regional. I think the bats are too unpredictable. I could, of course, count. I'd go to war with Cade Anderson and Anthony Ianson any weekend out of the year. And, I like what I've been seeing out of Case and Evans. I like what I've been seeing out of Zach Cohen, Sunday notwithstanding, but that's only 4 pitchers. And I'm not sure 4 reliable pitchers and an unpredictable offense is good enough to get you to Omaha.
Look, I think the pitching staff's fine. I do. I think the starting rotation has been awesome. They're the reason why you're in it. And also the bullpen, for the most part, has been fun. You have a lot of younger players in the bullpen, but so far, the bullpen's been okay, right? The bullpen's good enough for you to win the games you need to win.
Definitely good enough to win an A&M. Yeah, they should have won that.
But if you look at the last 2 series, the pitching staff has been fine. A lot of the runs that Tennessee scored last week were late in the game. When Tennessee won 9-3 or whatever in game 2, most of those runs came in the 8th inning, and that was after LSU struggled to hit the ball, right? And when you can't rely on your pitching staff, right, like that, right? You have to, but look, even if you're not a home run hitting team, and I get that, like, you want to see home runs, but they're just not. This is not that type of team. You have to hit the ball, right? There's no reason, like, I'm saying this right now. Chris Stanfield and Derek Curiel should be 1 and 2, or you can go either or, because they're the 2 best hitters right now the LSU has. If you look at SEC play, Chris Stanfield is batting .333, Derek Curiel is batting .313, right? If anything, Chris Stanfield should be hit up, should go off first. He's batting. His on base percentage is 400, which is the 2nd most in the SEC play. So let him go first. Have Derek Curiel come in and bat 2nd, and then let's say Daniel Dixon bat 3rd or something like that, and then figure out the rest. Right? Like, I mean, Luis Hernandez, who's a catcher, is your 4th best hitter right now. Usually catchers. I'm glad Luis Hernandez is batting well, but I mean, really, if you look at the rest of the lineup, Chris Stanfield and Derek Curiel are the only 2 batters that are hitting above 300 right now for LSU. And I actually saw this tweet from Hunt Palmer. Actually, let me bring this up. And Hunt Palmer. So this is what he said: getting things ready for Around the Horn tomorrow morning. This was he posted this last night. Of course, I think he was preparing for his radio show today. 6 Tigers started all 3 games this weekend: Jones, Curiel, Dixon, Milam, Braswell, and Stanfield. They combined to go 12 for 64 with 1 multi-hit game. And of course, Jared Jones was the only one that got that multi-hit game for everyone calling him a midweek merchant. And 12 for 64 is a 188 batting average. It's terrible. That's terrible. Right? And, the guys we're talking about, Jones, Curiel, Dickinson, Milam, Braswell, Stanfield, those 6 are your most reliable hitters. Chris Stanfield, by far, has been your most reliable hitter. Stanfield and Curiel have been your 2 best hitters so far in SEC play. But Jones, Dickinson, and Milam, Braswell, those guys should be reliable as well, especially Stephen Milam. Right? I mean, you can't be, because Stephen Milam's had a big job, and I think that's a people want to talk about Jared Jones, but I think Jared Jones sometimes gets unfair criticism because he does strike out a lot because he's more of a slugger. And look, I'm not saying those criticism isn't valid, but no one is talking about Stephen Milam a lot from behind the plate. He has been absolutely disappointing so far. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous how bad he's been. I mean, and just the season as a whole, he is batting 286. And then you go into SEC play, we already mentioned he is 205. I mean, that is horrendous. Yeah. And I actually need to pull up his last year's stats too, because
we're killing Jordan Thompson a couple years ago. And
yes,
somehow Milam's kind of, and I'm not trying to call for Milam's head, but it's just weird how there's just no discussion. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm also wondering, and then this might be harsh. Do we think that maybe Dickinson is kind of hitting a wall against SEC pitching because he did make a big leap from Utah Valley to LSU? That's a big jump. I mean, I don't know.
Not really. I mean, not really. I don't think so. I mean, look, what's his name? Derek Curiel was going against California high school pitching, and he's the leading batter right now. The second leading batter in SEC play and the leading batter as a whole in terms of batting average. Right. I don't think that really matters so much of a jump, right? If you're a good baseball player, you're a good baseball player. It's just that for some, besides Derek Curiel and Chris Stanfield, everybody else is struggling. And actually going off of last year's stats, Stephen Milam batted 326, by the way.
For the whole year, I'm assuming, yeah.
Yeah. He batted 326 last year. And of course, most of his production came in SEC play.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like he's had a massive drop off, like an absolute massive drop off. And really, if you put this in perspective, we'll bring that back up again. Jared Jones batted 301 last year. He's actually improved hitting wise. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, a season as a whole, Jared Jones is batting 349 in the regular season. And then, of course, his SEC play has gone down. You're going up against SEC competition. But he's batting 252, which isn't bad for the type of player he is. I mean, he is second on the team in RBIs in SEC play with 19, only behind Derek Curiel, right? And Derek Curiel is more of a contact hitter than Jared Jones. So it makes sense why he's getting more runs because he's a little bit of a better hitter than Jared Jones. But, I feel like, yes, it's a valid criticism around Jared Jones. Yes, but you got to blame the whole team at some point. You got to blame people are so afraid to blame Stephen. And look, I'm not trashing Stephen Milam. I still think Stephen Milam's a great player. But and look, it's the same way I treated Jordan Thompson. Jordan Thompson was a very good contact hitter. A lot of people forget that his last year at LSU, he actually had a great year. And before that collapse in the College World Series, or even the postseason in general, he was going to get drafted much higher than he was supposed to. And then he had of course, he had a bad postseason, including that game 2 of the College World Series. But for the most part, the whole year, he was one of your more clutch hitters throughout the year and was making plays in the infield.
Yeah. I
mean, his really only bad game in terms of fielding was that game 2. And people forgot about that, because people want him to live up to the legacies of Alex Bregman and Kim Mulkey's son. But Kramer Robinson, I know people and that's still the joke around here. Kramer Robinson, son of Kim Mulkey, although he was an all SEC shortstop. But I just felt like there was a lot of unfair expectations that were laid onto Jordan Thompson. And although some of the criticism of Jordan Thompson was valid, he did lose you a lot of games in the 2022, but 2023 he improved greatly in the field in fielding and then also hitting behind the plate. Like that, remember he had the 3-run double against Tennessee that won you game 1 and eventually helped you win the whole series in general. I mean, that was a big time hit, but for some reason we're afraid to criticize Stephen Milam because we like him. It's okay to criticize the players you like.
Yeah.
Criticize Gary Nesbitt, and I liked him. I criticized Joe Burrow and Joe Burrow and Jay Daniels, even though I liked them. It's okay to criticize the players that they like. Because if they're not playing good, it's okay to criticize them. That's really my whole point, right? You gotta stop laying off of Jared Jones because it's the whole team at this point. Outside of maybe 2 batters that are really struggling as SEC play. And you shouldn't rely on Kate Anderson, Anthony Irons, and the pitching staff in general to bail you out for your struggles. You have to find it because, and especially this weekend, if you're LSU, you want to win 4 of your next 6 games to basically secure a super regional spot. I think if you win 4 of those final 6 games, you secure a super regional spot. Because right now, I think LSU is sitting around.
They've got 15 SEC wins. 19 should be more than enough, or maybe not more than enough, but 19 should be enough. But
right, and their RPI is really high too, right? Yeah. And then of course you get that SEC tournament, so you don't know how LSU is going to perform in the SEC tournament. A lot of people remember last year we didn't know what to expect of LSU to go in this SEC tournament, but then they made it all the way to the championship game. So a lot of things can happen in the sport of baseball. But right now, if you can't hit, you're just not going to go where you want to go, and that's just simple as that. And people are saying, "Well, we should fire Jay." No, calm down. Actually, look, this is the tweet I wanted to share with you guys. Hold on, let me pull this up because I quote tweeted this, and you also quote tweeted this too as well, Zach. But here you go. This is what I said. My favorite thing about baseball season is LSU fans treating baseball like football because they lose 1 game. It is mind-boggling that some people blame Jay Johnson for putting his best reliever in a critical situation for the loss. This is from Caden Naps. Of course, Caden is one of the more prominent members of LSU Twitter, and I actually met him before he became a huge name among LSU Twitter. But this is what he tweeted. Since we're on the topic, the timeline is blaming Jay Johnson for putting the team in a position to be up two with 2 outs in the 8th with Zach Cohen on the hill. He only pitched 60 games. It was a game 1 where he pitched, or it was a game 2.
Game 1, he pitched like.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Remember, it was game 1. Yeah, because but like he's been your best reliever all year. He leads the team in saves. Why wouldn't you put him out there? Yeah. That's what I'm saying. You can't rely on the pitching staff to win you every game. Eventually, you have to swing the bat. You have to hit the ball. That's it. And that's something that LSU needs to do moving forward. You got Arkansas coming up. By the way, Arkansas has won 11 of his last 14 games against LSU. That is the one team that LSU's really struggled against in recent memory.
And they're coming off the sweep of Texas, so they're riding high. They've got a lot of momentum. The only thing, I don't want to say the only thing, but LSU thankfully has this series at home, and for whatever reason, home field advantage seems to really matter this year in SEC baseball. So maybe that's LSU's saving grace, but they're going to really have to earn it this weekend if they take 2 out of 3.
Yeah, of course, Zach, of course, and it's just. You have this is a must. I'm not saying you necessarily have to win the series, but you have to win 4 of your next 6 games, whether you win the series against Arkansas or you sweep Arkansas or vice versa. With South Carolina. South Carolina's looking really bad, by the way. But then again, I also said, I think I said this on the reaction video about South Carolina. Yes, they're playing bad baseball, but I wouldn't be surprised if South Carolina decided to play their best version of baseball, because remember, Paul Maneri is their head coach, and he was the head coach of LSU, so maybe they're more motivated, especially with the LSU team coming in, to win the series, because you just don't know in the sport of college baseball. And really, also, Zach, and I also want to mention this too before we move on to the next topic, which is it's almost the same exact scenario as last year. Because remember, Texas A&M was the number 1 team in the country.
Yeah.
and LSU was in the dumps. Like, we're like, oh, like, look, we probably have no shot to win the series, but if we're going to win anybody this season, it's going to be A&M just because it's A&M. Like, eventually, somewhere down the line, A&M's going to blow it right there. It's just the history of Texas A&M. And that's what they did. LSU won 2 games out of 3, and that was the catapult for them in their late season success. I mean, of course, they went to the championship final in the conference play, and then they got to North Carolina and really probably should have won the regional, but fell just short. But before that, we weren't even sure if LSU was even going to make postseason play, right? And it's almost vice versa. Come this season, literally the same exact time. LSU's number 2 team in the country. They're riding high. They're coming off a huge series win over Tennessee. Meanwhile, Texas A&M has no idea if they're going to make the tournament or not. So they have to win games. They have to win the ones that they need to. They need to win the games that they need to win to even think about postseason play. And that's what they did. It was a trap. It was a true trap series. And I made a video about it. It's like, this is the perfect trap series for LSU because you're coming off a huge series win. You're going on the road to College Station. Blue Bell Park's one of the toughest places to play on the road. And even though A&M's is having an up and down season, there's still a lot of talent left from that team from last year, even if they're struggling on the pitcher side and also behind the plate. And LSU and Texas A&M probably play, and really also Texas A&M also beat. I think they beat Tennessee in the series earlier this year too. So they're still a good team despite their struggles. And LSU laid a complete egg. You should have won that game. You had the lead in the bottom of the 8th inning, and you blew it. And that's just how it goes in the sport of baseball. But Zach, any last thoughts before we move on to our next segment, which should be a fun one, by the way.
You just got to find 4 wins. Just find 4 wins.
Yeah, sorry, to plug on my microphone. My computer's about to die, but I need to plug my phone in. But my computer in. But Zach, why don't you get started with the next segment?
Yeah, we did this 2 shows ago. We were talking about just Mount Rushmore of I believe all-time LSU football players, and we had thought maybe we should just go position by position. So Grant had me text my Mount Rushmore of LSU quarterbacks, just quarterbacks only. Might be a controversial take, but I'm going to have Joe Burrow on there. Might be controversial, but I'm going to have Jaden Daniels on there. I feel like, the whole Heisman Trophy thing, that's probably more than deserving of a spot on my fictitious Mount Rushmore. I had struggled. I'm going to shout out the old heads out there. I'm going to put Y.A. Tittle out there. And I'm going to put Burt Jones on there. I mean, for a while, Burt Jones was LSU's best ever quarterback, at least NFL is concerned. Shout out to that MVP that he wore way back when for the Colts. It actually looks like Grant and I have a pretty much the same. You know what, Grant? I actually thought about doing Tommy Hodson, so I'm glad that we get him on the same wavelength. Ever heard of it?
Yeah, hold on, let me pull up yours. Hold on, because I did a lot of visuals. Give me 1 second. But yeah, Zach, I actually like that. Of course, it's painfully obvious that you had to put up Jaden Daniels and Joe Burrow. I mean, they won the Heisman. I mean, it's as simple as that. They both won the Heisman. You're probably your 2 most prolific quarterbacks in LSU history. And my computer's lagging. My God. But let's see. Which one was it? Is it this one or was it 7? Okay, so 6. This is it. Bang. Perfect. There we go. Yeah, so Zach, Y.A. Tittle, of course. Y.A. Tittle is the OGs of OGs. Burt Jones, from guys who may not be familiar, Burt Jones was the one that threw the famous game-winning touchdown pass to, I believe it was Brad Davis, not Brad Davis offensive line coach, but Brad Davis, the running back in the 70s, for the game-winning touchdown and what was was a controversial ending because there was I think it was like there was time ran out, but then for some reason there's still time left on the clock. And there's a joke that like if you I think it was driving, you go over to Louisiana, make sure to draw your clocks 4 seconds back or whatever. I got the actual like quote, but but he's the one that threw the game winner touchdown pass. Of course, he was an All-American quarterback for LSU, and of course ended up being the number 1 overall pick and also the NFL MVP. Let me pull up Burt Jones accolades real quick, but Burt Jones, of course, was a consensus All-American, so he's an All-American coordinator every single publication or vote or whatnot, and then also was a first-team All-SEC performer, and but yeah, so he's once. I mean, even though he really didn't start that many games, like he only started about 2 seasons for LSU, he still left his mark in LSU lore with his game-winning touchdown pass. I think it was 1970. Oh, here we go. So was one of Jones's most famous moments came in the 1972 LSU versus Ole Miss game when he led LSU to a 17-16 last-second victory by hitting running back Brad Davis in the end zone for a touchdown as time expired. But there was I forgot the controversy. I gotta find it. Zach, if you want to pull it up, if you want to find it, because it's a very famous controversial moment in the LSU Ole Miss rivalry. If you want to look that up, but Wyatt Tittle was also the very first quarterback for LSU that ended up being a 2-time All-SEC performer. I know it's the 1940s, but again, he was the OG of OG quarterbacks in LSU history, and he also, I believe, may have been the first round quarterback for LSU in LSU history, and he ended up being a Pro Football Hall of Famer for LSU. He may have been the first one too, Zach, but he was he was a 7-time Pro Bowler. He spent most of his career with the 49ers and spent his last 4 seasons with the New York Giants. And he actually won the most valuable player with the New York Giants in 1963, but he was also 4-time first-team All-Pro, 7-time Pro Bowler, 3-time NFL passing touchdowns leader, and 2-time NFL completion percentage leader. So he's a very prolific quarterback, not only for LSU, but for the NFL as well. I know that was kind of a different time for the NFL in terms of the NFL, but once again, he is the OG of OG quarterbacks for LSU. And let me look if he actually is no, he's the second. He was the second behind Steve Van Buren. But but he was the first LSU quarterback to be inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame and won't be the last. Not gonna lie. But Zach, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm going to reserve a spot or reserve the right to eventually put Garrett Nussmeier on this Mount Rushmore if he has the type of season that I think he could have in 2025 that results in, I don't know, a Heisman Trophy or a national championship or a number 1 overall pick, or heck, why not do all 3 and do like Joe Burrow? If he has that type of season, I think he could work his way onto this very serious Mount Rushmore that I made up in my own head. I also thought about giving some love to Jamarcus Russell, maybe the best arm that LSU's ever had. And the story, his pro day, he hit the goalpost from like 80 yards away on one knee. But I don't know. I mean, the whole NFL thing just soured everyone's memory of it, I feel, or I fear.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but yeah. So, I mean, that's a pretty impressive Mount Rushmore. And that's the thing about LSU, like, of course, you got the 2 bona fide ones, Jane Daniels, Joe Burrow. But then, once you start going on the list, like, okay, who do I put over? But, I think there's still a lot of good options at quarterback. And eventually, once we get to running backs, that's where running backs, receivers, that's where you start maybe getting to a little bit of controversy. Because what do you describe as, do you go off of college stat? Well, like, what is the criteria for picking, your Mount Rushmore? Do you and I think that when you go for Mount Rushmore, you have to go off of accomplishments in college, whether it's not only just stats but also accolades as well, and the impact that he may have had on the program. And that's what I kind of did with my list. Of course, mine's a little bit different, about the same as Zach, but a little bit different. Of course, you still have to go Wyatt Tittle, one of the OGs of the quarterbacking the LSU program. Of course, and you also have to go with Joe Burrow and Jay Daniels. Not really that hard to explain, Zach. I mean, they both won the Heisman. Of course, Joe Burrow was the quarterback for the legendary 2019 team, which may be the best team in college football history, depending on who you talk to. Although you can make the case for 0-1 Miami and 1995 Nebraska, but if you can't agree on who's the best team of all time, it is certainly the greatest offense that college football has ever seen. And then, of course, Jane Daniels may be the most dynamic player that has ever played at LSU. You can make a strong case for that. And if he had a defense, you can make the case that he may have had a better season than Joe Burrow. And I'm not even joking. Just given the fact that he ran for 1,200. What was his final stat? I know he passed for nearly, because if you played a playoff game, right? Hypothetically, let's say LSU had the season they played in the SEC championship or in the playoff, he would have thrown for over 4,000 yards. I mean, but Jane Daniels, if I'm looking at his stats, actually, he passed for over 3,800 yards, and he ran for 1,100 yards. And if that team actually ended up living up to expectations, he may have shattered a lot of records. I mean, what he did was incredible in just 12 games for LSU. But where my list differs from Zach is the addition of Tommy Hudson. Tommy Hudson is one of, if not the most accomplished quarterback in LSU history, and rightfully so. He's still LSU's all-time yardage leader with 9,115 yards, and he threw for 2,000 yards in every single season. Remember, different era of college football, different era of football in general, right? If back then throwing for 2,000 yards in 3 straight seasons was almost like throwing for 3,700 in 3 straight seasons in today's college football, right? Because different game back then, people were still running the wishbone. It's still very, very different time in college football. But if he's LSU's all-time leader in yardage, and he's in the top 5 for almost every single passing category in LSU history, but also was an SEC Freshman of the Year, and still is the only LSU quarterback to be a 3-time All-SEC quarterback. Only one. Not Joe Burrow, not Jane Daniels. Now, Wyatt Tittle was a 2-time, but never 3. Burt Jones, only one. Jamarcus Russell. I don't even think Jamarcus Russell even made All-SEC. He may have 1 year. He was first team All-SEC in 2006. But you also got to think about this. Between 2008 and 2018, LSU was considered a quarterback grade. I mean, if you really think about it.
Yeah, and then Danny Etley changed everything.
Sort of. Sort of. Well, he was definitely an improvement. I mean, he was definitely an improvement over of Jordan Jefferson and what's the other guy's name?
Jarrett Lee.
Jarrett Lee and Anthony
I thought about
Jennings
putting on there as like a homage to that really fun 2013 season. It was
Zach Mettenberger had some good years too. And really, Zach Mettenberger, he was robbed of, TJ Yeldon. It's a combination of TJ Yeldon and having your head coach be Les Miles.
Yeah.
Although he did put up numbers in a Les Miles offense, but still remember who his head coach was.
How far we've come.
Oh God. I mean, how long were you at LSU, by the way?
From 2011, and I graduated December of 2015.
Oh, Jesus.
So I was in the peak Les Miles unraveling stuff. That was my whole Tiger Band experience.
We got to come up with a Mount Rushmore for iconic Les Miles moments. We'll have to come up with something. Maybe sometime during the summer we have to, because it was being mentioned a lot where people were talking about what was the most boneheaded thing you've seen in college football history that you've seen while watching, being a fan of college football. And there's there's two of them. One was, of course, the iconic, "What are you doing?" against Ole Miss in 2009. And, of course, the LSU Tennessee ending in 2010. And really, I mean, Zach, because I know you're a member of the band, were you there for the 2012 Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl?
Sure was.
Oh, no. That's another one. I think that's another one that people forget about, because really that was the end of my opinion of the Les Miles. Because I don't think they ever recovered from that.
And that was also the beginning of Clemson.
It sure was. It really was. I mean, I know Clemson's moment kind of came in 2011 when they made when they won the SEC championship and made the Orange Bowl. But to me, that was the one that really kicked off that 5-6 year stretch of just Clemson dominance. Really, because that was another game LSU should have won under the Les Miles era. But Zach, that's another, because this wasn't part of the plan. But I want to discuss this, and this is a hot topic that I think maybe you guys can. I think this might be talked about in the years past, but we don't want to do it because we love both these players. But who do you think was a better quarterback for LSU, Joe Burrow or Jane Daniels? Since we're on this topic of Mount Rushmore quarterback.
I mean, Burrow just had like all the answers to the test, but the way Daniels could just do whatever he wanted that fall of 2023. I mean, you read off the numbers. That was 3,500 passing yards, 1,100 rushing yards. That's 4,600 yards of offense in 12 games. I think it actually might be Daniels.
That's what I was thinking too, because I think we give Joe Burrow the benefit of the doubt because he won the national championship. But if you look at because I think even as great as Joe Burrow was, the only two quarterbacks that would have overcame what Jane Daniels had to overcome, the only two quarterbacks I think of are Joe Burrow and Jane Daniels, because we already seen what Joe Burrow's doing, and that's the thing too, is we already seen what Joe Burrow was doing with the bad defense himself with the Cincinnati Bengals, right? He had the full 2023 Jane Daniels experience in a nutshell. But what Jane Daniels did, he rushing for 1,100 yards in a 12-game stretch as a quarterback is extremely impressive. It's one thing to do as a running back. You're getting the ball, right? At least 20, 30 times a game. How many times does Jane Daniels get to run in a game? Maybe 10, at most 15? That Florida game where he passed for over 300 and rushed for over 200, that has never been done before. that has never been done before in NCAA history. He's the only one, not even John Manziel, not Tim Tebow, some of the greatest door-to-door quarterbacks you can think of in college football history. He's the only one that's done it. And he did it against, I know Florida was not a very good team that year, but doing it against another SEC opponent is really impressive, especially one that is your rival. And he also had to do that, because remember that he did some of his biggest moments in that game came when it was a close game.
Yeah, it's just not fair that Daniels is kind of robbed of the. I'm glad he got the individual success, but he was deserving of the team success that Burrow had in 19.
Yeah, also I feel like for both quarterbacks, I say Joe Burrow may have had the greatest season LSU quarterback's ever had, but I don't like it. I also want to pull what I mean. We got to look at because Joe Burrow and Jane Daniels both had a similar season because they both struggled during their first year at LSU. But I want to look it up. But Zach, I mean, do you think Joe Burrow would have done what Jane Daniels would have done in 2023?
No.
You really think that?
Well, I mean, he had Neighbors and Tom, or he would have had Neighbors, Thomas, Lacey, Mason Taylor, Logan Diggs is a forgotten great running back, 4 pros along the offensive line. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, people forget before his injury, Logan Diggs was one of the better running backs.
Really good running back.
Oh my God, he was awesome, like awesome. Like the Ole Miss game, he balled out. Man, it just sucks that he got injured because dude, that dude would have been drafted. He would have definitely been an NFL back. And really, I think that's what kind of hurt LSU down in the long run because they never look. It's not a diss towards Josh Williams. Josh Williams, of course, was one of the leaders of the team. And of course, he was a leader of a team, was a captain and whatnot, but he just didn't have that same burst and speed that Logan Diggs had before that season. He just didn't. But let me pull up it. Their game by game. I'm actually doing that right now. That's why I'm kind of stalling a little bit. Come on, Wi-Fi. But yeah, I think that's interesting that you say that because it's a hot topic because we already seen what Joe Burrow can do with a bad defense. But also you can make the case that Jane had to do more because at times the offensive line was suspect, which we learned a year later, which was last season, how suspect the line really was. And really, I know as great as the rush totals looked for LSU in 2022 and 2023, a lot of that had to do with Jane Daniels. But this is Jane Daniels' stats right here in 2022. Of course, he actually completed 68.6% of his passes for 2,900 yards, 70 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and ran for another 885 and scored 11 touchdowns on the ground. Here we go. Come on, Joe Burrow stats pull up. But you can see what you had those two. The 2 games of Santa, of course, was the Auburn game where he only completed 40% of his passes, and then the Arkansas game where he did a little bit better to complete his passes. But also that game, he had the flu, and LSU had to rely on our Lord and Savior Harold Perkins to have an historic game for LSU to even win the game and then ultimately clinch a spot in the SEC championship game. And just why can't these? It's almost like my computer doesn't want us to rewrite history and say Jane Daniels is a better quarterback. Although, I think it's about even. But okay, let me go to ESPN. Maybe I gotta go to ESPN. But Zach, what were your overall thoughts about Jane Daniels' season that year? Because I think that even though his struggles, he had some great moments. Of course, Florida, where that was the game against after Tennessee, where he got a lot of criticism, and then just went off. He scored he was responsible for every single touchdown in that game, and then also on top of that, the Alabama game, of course. Yeah, I have to mention that because he did beat Alabama his first year. Tiger saying, well, Joe Burrow didn't, and it's very similar teams that season because they both had suspect offensive lines. The running game sometimes was, a lot of times was iffy, depending on the type of game they had. And there's like a lot of, I'll say 2018 did have a better defense than that Jane Daniels team, but what are your overall thoughts about that season? Because I think sometimes I know you look at those 2 games, but overall he actually had a decent. He would have thrown for over 3,000 yards if it weren't for the 2 stinkers.
Yeah, I thought it was a perfectly fine first year for a quarterback starting. I was at the Florida game in Gainesville, and that was kind of a clunker, but it was really the Auburn game for Burrow with the throw to, I believe it was Derek Dillon. and it was like a 70-ish yard catch and run. It was a dot. And I remember saying to my friends, like, I think we've got something here. And how right we ended up being.
And the funniest thing too is that Joe Burrow did not have a great first season. Although, like, even during his bad games, you're like, yeah, boys, I think we got something here, because he, like, even like Miami, like, for example, the first 2 games of the year, he didn't like the first game against Miami, he completed 45.8% of his passes, and then against Southeastern, only 50% of his passes. Like, he really struggled those first 2 games of the year. And if you look at Jane Daniels, he completed 68.6% of his passes. The only 2 games where he threw for under 50% or 55% was against the aforementioned Auburn game, where he only completed 40% of his passes. That really was probably his worst game he's ever played. Although he did rush for a touchdown, that may have been his worst game in general. And then Arkansas, he completed 53.3% of his passes. And of course, as it's shown, hold on, it's not. I didn't even show. I need to show this on the screen, but yeah, you guys can see that right there. I mean, overall, like, it was a average to above average season. But if you look past the stats, look at the context. I mean, even that Tennessee game, like, there's a lot of drop balls in that game. And remember, Jane Daniels threw a dot to Dre Jenkins, and if he caught it, it's a touchdown, because there's nobody beside him or in front of him, and it would have changed the whole perspective of the game. But he dropped it. Even then, 71% of his passes for 300 yards. He got a lot of criticism after the game, and then bang, the next game, 349 yards of passing, throwing absolute dots all across the field, especially that one, the Brian Thomas. Then the next game, he had that great game against Ole Miss where he passed for 248 yards, completed 75% of his passes, and then also rushed for another 121 yards and 3 touchdowns. In the Alabama game, of course, where he actually outplayed Bryce Young. I mean, I know Bryce Young his numbers look maybe a little bit better. If you actually remember that game, nearly 69% of his passes for 182 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then, of course, 95 yards rushing. And that touchdown, that was the game-time touchdown that ended up being, and then they went for 2, and he threw the very famous game-winning 2-point conversion to Mason Taylor for the win. But I think also one of the more forgotten plays too. Zach, where'd you go? Oh, Zach left. Where'd he go? Where'd he go? Zach, come back. Probably because of his dogs. But anyway, yeah, well, it's the same. But if you actually look at his stats, he'll be back. I'll text him. But if you look at his stats, I mean, the Mason Taylor game. Going back to the Alabama game, but one of the more forgotten plays was the potential game-winning touchdown pass to Mason Taylor. He threw it above 2 Alabama defenders for the perfect dot to Mason Taylor. That should have been the game-winning touchdown, but Alabama drove down the field, got the game-time field goal to send the game into overtime. And then, of course, LSU ended up winning the game. But now let's look at Joe Burrow's stats. But very similar. Although very similar in terms of numbers, right? 2,894 yards, 16 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. He threw for less yards than Jane Daniels, and passed one less touchdown, and I think it was more. I'm not sure the number. I think it was. So Jane Daniels only threw for 3. Only threw 3 interceptions, while Joe Burrow threw 5. So Jane Daniels had a better completion percentage, a few more yards, 1 more touchdown, and 2 less interceptions. But if you look at Joe Burrow had a lot more bad games than Jane Daniels on paper, right? Like I mentioned, Miami, 11 for 24, 140 passing yards, no touchdowns. Only completed 45.8% of his passes, right? Southeast in the very next game, 10 for 20 for 151 yards and 2 touchdowns. only, and by the way, only completed 50% of his passes, right? Auburn only completed 44.1% of his passes, and he threw a touchdown. But that one touchdown was the play that Zach was talking about, which was the throw to Derek Dillon that went 70 yards. So I mean, so that touchdown play helped out a whole lot. And then of course, then also he didn't throw a single touchdown pass in the month of October. So there are some strong arguments there that you can say Jane Daniels did have a more they may have had a better career than Joe Burrow, despite Joe Burrow winning the national championship. I mean, there's a case to be made. I'm not going to make a side in this, but I think it was a very important discussion because I think it's a very important thing to talk about as we're talking about as we went from the Mount Rushmore quarterbacks to who had a better who was a better quarterback, Jane Daniels or Joe Burrow. I think that's a very very interesting discussion. Whatever happened to Zach? I'm gonna see what's going on with him. Yeah, because he disappeared on me.
Your call has been forwarded.
I think I'm probably just wrap up the show there. I don't know what happened to him. Lost him there. But that's gonna wrap up this. Oh, here you go. I got him. Hey Zach, what happened?
I don't know. The thing crashed. I thought it crashed on your end too.
No, I'm still rolling over here. Maybe it's I think it was you.
Okay, I don't know.
Yeah. So you just want me to wrap up the show? All right. I got you. All right, cool. All right. See you next week. Bye-bye. All right, yeah. So I think it crashed on his end. So he had some technical difficulties. So we're gonna wrap up there. But once again, make sure to like this video and like this video and subscribe to LSU. Oh, like the video and subscribe to LSU at the Voice of College Football. We do this every Monday at 6 o'clock Central Time, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. And we just talk a lot about topics, what important LSU topics, football, baseball, basketball, and then of course during the summer we're going to come up with a bunch of fun topics to talk about because just because it's the dog days of summer, but of course there's always going to be some recruiting news pop up. We might interview some recruits down the line. And then also on top of that, you have SEC Media Day. So there's going to be a lot of stuff to talk about. But once August rolls around, that's when fall camp starts up and we can get rolling with even more content. But there's always stuff to talk about in terms of LSU sports. But yeah, help us grow. Like the video, subscribe, click on the bell for any notifications. And also you can follow us on Twitter. That's Asher Grant and Zachary Jenda. But we're both on Twitter. We're both very active. He does written content for In the Valley Shug. I do written content for both Crest City Sports right here in New Orleans. And then, of course, TigerBait.com, where I write some articles for LSU recruiting. So that's where you can find our written content. But there's going to be a lot of videos being broadcast. So I'm still going to go time where I have a 10 to 20 minute video about a certain topic regarding LSU sports, especially football. I'm going to do that as much as possible. So short. We're also going to clip the show, so if you miss a segment, you can always come back and watch it. And then also we're going to do. We started doing reaction videos after the conclusion of a game or a series. In terms of baseball series, of course, for football and basketball, especially for football, we're going to do post game reactions. And so you guys can hear our thoughts about the matter. But in the meantime, you guys have a great rest of your week. Also enjoy Mother's Day weekend as well. Spend time with your family this week. because Mother's Day. The thing is about Mother's Day, this is my perspective on it. You don't know when your mom's gonna go, so spend every precious moment that you have with your mother, or whether it's biological, or your step, or your adoptive mother. It doesn't matter. Just spend time with them. You just don't know when that time is going to come. But enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll see you guys later. And of course, Zach is going to be on here a lot, hopefully without technical difficulties. But me and him, or whoever is going to come on, will always be back. But see you guys later.